Hello, and welcome back to the Chirping Pigeons YouTube channel. If you haven't had the chance to check out any of our content, please go back and do so, as it would really help us out. In today's episode, we're going to be recapping round 2 of the NHL that just finished on Monday night. The first series we're going to talk about is the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Going into this series, I had Edmonton taking in 6 games. I really thought that they were going to continue to have a great power play like they did and be able to figure it out 5-on-5 and hopefully get some better goaltending. But that was not the case at all. Vegas is a really good 5-on-5 team. Like I said in the past video, they have one of the best D-cores in the NHL, and they were able to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl 5-on-5 for the most part. I will say that Edmonton's power play percentage of 46 leads the Cap era in the playoffs, which is just phenomenal. But you're going to have to be able to get it done 5-on-5 if you want to win. This series was back and forth for the first couple games. Vegas taking game 1, Edmonton game 2, Vegas game 3, and then Vegas was able to take game 5 and 6 to take it home and head to the conference finals. Game 1 was definitely quite interesting in this series, as Edmonton scoring 4 goals in a 6-4 loss, all 4 coming from Leon Draisaitl. He is leading the NHL so far with 13 goals in 12 games in the playoffs, and that's how he's going to end it. Just incredible. Not much more you can ask for him to do on the offensive side. I really thought at the end of the day this series did come down to goaltending for the most part. Stuart Skinner was kind of iffy in round 1 against the LA Kings. He was pulled once. I feel like the offense kind of carried him, and I think it really showed in round 2. He was pulled 3 different times in 3 losses against the Vegas Golden Knights, and he just really wasn't able to be that backbone that I thought he was all season long. On the other side for Vegas, I don't think Laurent Brossoit was really good in the first couple games he played. I mean, the 4 goals that he let in against Leon Draisaitl, he wasn't really good in game 2, and then game 3 in the second period, he left with a lower body injury. Adin Hill came in, finished that game, finished the series off. I thought for the most part he was pretty solid, except for game 4, where he was a little bit iffy, I thought, but I mean, he was able to get it done. He looked solid back there. I mean, in game 6 as well, he let in 2 goals in the first 2 shots. After that, making 39 straight saves to get Vegas the win and send them to the conference finals. I don't think that this was a deciding factor in the series, but going back to game 4, when Alex Pietrangelo slashed Leon Draisaitl, he did get a 1-game suspension. I thought that he probably should have got a couple more, considering Darnell Nurse only got 1 game for the instigator. I mean, hearing also that Nick Hague and Darnell Nurse were talking before the puck was dropped, a couple minutes before, about dropping the gloves, and Nurse is still getting that instigator suspension, and there was 2 incidents during the season where this happened and it was overturned. I just really thought at the end of the day that Pietrangelo and Nurse shouldn't have got the same amount of games for a suspension, considering Nick Hague was kind of a willing part in dropping the gloves as well, and Alex Pietrangelo intentionally tried to slash, and I don't want to say intentionally tried to break Leon Draisaitl's wrist, but that's what it looked like from the video that we saw. Another factor in this series I thought was Edmonton not being able to hold on to a lead. I mean, in game 5 they were up 2-1, and Vegas scored 3 goals in 90 seconds that pretty much ended the game. And even in game 6 they were up 2-1 3 minutes into the game. Vegas scoring 3 straight goals in that second period, all from Jonathan Marchessault for a natural hat trick. Just seemed to be the end of it, and they were able to shut down Edmonton in the third period, and they will be headed to the conference finals to play the Dallas Stars. I think this is definitely a little bit of a disappointment for Edmonton, considering that they did make the conference finals last year. I think that they believe that they had the team to do it. I really don't think they did, especially on the back end, and their goaltending really did not help them at all. So I'm curious to see what moves they're going to make in the offseason to try and make a run next year. The second series we're going to be talking about is the Dallas Stars and the Seattle Kraken. First off, I want to say Seattle had a great season and a great run in the playoffs, going to 2 straight game 7s, just not being able to get it done against the Dallas Stars. I mean, going to 7 games means it was a close series, but I thought for the most part these games were not that close. You had Seattle winning that game 7-2, where they scored 5 goals in the second period. I mean, in game 6 as well, it just seemed like from the middle point of the second period that Seattle was going to take that and it was going to be headed to game 7. I will say the 2 most interesting games were probably game 1 and game 7. Just like the Edmonton Oilers and Leon Draisaitl, Joe Pavelski scored 4 goals in a loss in game 1, which is just incredible to me. I can't believe that these guys scored 4 goals each on back-to-back nights and their team wasn't able to get the win. And game 7 on Monday night was just I thought a really hard-fought game. Thought it could have went either way. Roope Hintz opened the goal scoring in the second period. Wyatt Johnson scores on his 20th birthday, which ends up being the game winner. Oliver Bjorkstrand scoring late. I mean, he was awesome in round 1, game 7. He was great in round 2, game 7 too, scoring with 14 seconds left, but just not enough time to be able to tie that game. Both goaltenders, Jake Ottinger and Philip Grubauer, I thought for the most part this series were not that great. Ottinger was pulled twice against the Kraken, which is not very usual for him, but every time he has a bad game, he seems to bounce back, and that's exactly what you need from an elite goaltender. The one thing I thought that was definitely crucial for this series was Miro Heiskanen. I think this guy is such an underrated defenseman, and probably, honestly, even at this point, maybe even top 5 in the league. He just eats minutes. He played over 30 minutes against the Kraken in Game 7. He's just relied upon so much. He definitely broke out for points this year, and he's just been elite defensively since he came into the NHL, I think. I think the Seattle Kraken have a lot to be proud of in this season. A lot of people, including myself, did not expect them to make it this far. They do have a really deep team. I mean, at the beginning of round 1, I think Hackstall set up the lines where they had a 20-goal scorer on each line just to get that depth throughout the lineup. They are leading the playoffs in block shots, hits, and scoring from depth. I mean, that's exactly what you need to win in the playoffs. Game 7 really could have went either way, and we could be talking about a Vegas versus Seattle conference finals, the 2 newest expansion teams. Really sucks for Seattle that they weren't able to get it done. But I mean, like I said, I think this is only really a positive for them moving forward. Maybe they'll be able to attract some high-end free agents or be able to bring in someone highly touted in a trade, and they'll be able to make another run next year because Seattle looks like a great place to play and a great hockey town. Moving over now to the Eastern Conference, the first series we're going to talk about is the Carolina Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils. Man, was I wrong about this series. I thought that New Jersey, coming off that huge high of beating the Rangers 4 to the last 5 games, was going to translate into round 2. New Jersey has really solid defense and good upfront scoring. I thought that they were just going to be able to outmatch Carolina. But Carolina, man, this defense is so strong. That man-on-man they play that Rod Brind'Amour introduced a couple years ago is really shining right now. They don't even have 3 of their top 5 forwards in Tuomo Teravainen, Max Pacioretty, and Andrei Svechnikov, and they're still able to get it done with some of this depth scoring, and their top-end guys, Martin Necas and Sebastian Aho, just still continuing to produce. I thought the real, I don't want to say story of this series, but breakout player was definitely Jordan Martinook. He didn't have any points in the 6 games versus the New York Islanders, and he broke out for 9 points in 5 games against the New Jersey Devils, including 4 points in Game 4. I thought from the start this series really wasn't that close. I mean, Carolina kind of just dummied New Jersey in the first 2 games. New Jersey came back in Game 3 with an 8-4 win, but I thought that was probably Carolina's worst game of the season, not even including just the playoffs. They looked awful. They pulled Freddie Anderson after 4 goals. Pyotr Kochetkov came in and let 4. But I mean, it didn't really seem to phase Carolina. They came back the next game out really strong. I really thought that New Jersey's downfall in this series was their goaltending. I mean, Akira Schmid was great since he came in round 1, game 3 against the Rangers. He was pulled in game 6 against the Rangers and game 1 and 2 against the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, Vitek Vanacek came in. He wasn't much better, letting in 4 goals in game 3. He was pulled in game 4. And then game 5, we really had a solid performance out of Akira Schmid, but it seemed like it was a little bit too late, losing in overtime off a Jesper Foss goal. And on the other hand, I thought Freddie Anderson, for the most part, was really solid. Minus game 4 where he was pulled, he did what he had to do. Like I said, Carolina's defense might make him look a little bit better than he actually is, but I mean, you just need a solid performance back there, and I thought that's exactly what he gave them. And the good thing about Carolina, like I said earlier, is they've got 3 guys that they can go to. If Freddie Anderson's not working, you've got Antti Ranta, who got you through most of the first round. He was sick for most of the second round and barely even dressed for most of the games. Pyotr Kochetkov really doesn't have a lot of playoff experience, but he was really good in the regular season this year when he was called upon. I think Carolina, at the end of the day, really just suffocated the Devils. I think that home ice Carolina just absolutely loves to play on, and they seem like they're almost unbeatable there. That crowd's just awesome and gets them into the game every single game. The Devils' real opportunity to get back in this series was Game 4 at home. I mean, after that 8-4 win, hoping that they can continue that momentum. Honestly, I know the goaltending wasn't great, but I would have went back to Akira Schmid after that Game 3 win from the Devils. Vanacek did nothing this playoffs that impressed me, and I honestly think he was debatably the worst goalie in the playoffs this year. So at the end of the day, Carolina taking this series in 5 games. They're going to be headed to the Eastern Conference Finals to play against the Florida Panthers. It looks like Tuomo Teravainen might be back, so we'll see what they can do, and maybe they'll be headed to the Stanley Cup Finals. The final series we're going to be talking about is the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. I thought this series was definitely going to be a lot tighter than it ended up being, with the Florida Panthers taking the Toronto Maple Leafs in 5 games. I mean, Florida coming out to that 3-0 series lead just kind of put a huge dagger in the Leafs' hopes, I thought. They did come out hard in Game 4, blocking a lot of shots, I found. Wasn't able to get that offense going all series long, scoring 2 goals in every single game, and their core 4 players having 4 goals combined in 5 games. But you also got to tip your hat to Sergei Bobrovsky. Man, he's looking like Vezina Bob right now, playing unbelievable. I would say the best goalie in the playoffs so far. May have put a little bit of chip on his shoulder when Alex Lyon got those first couple starts against the Boston Bruins, but ever since he's came in, I think he's looked fantastic. A 50 save performance in a 3-2 overtime win in Game 5 to send them to the conference finals. We'll see if he can keep it up into the conference finals, but just a great performance so far for him throughout these playoffs. On the other hand, in the Leafs goaltending, it was a combination of Ilya Samsonov and Joseph Woll, with Samsonov playing those first 2 games and leaving Game 3 with I think it was an upper body injury after Luke Schenn slid into him. Joseph Woll came in though, and he was really solid, I thought, for the rest of Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5. I mean, he kept them in every single game and was able to get his first career playoff win in Game 4. On the other hand, for the Leafs, like I said, I think it just came down to their lack of goal scoring. I think Game 2 was really crucial for them. After losing Game 1, they were up in Game 2 in the first, I think, minute and a half of the second period in Game 2. They let up 2 goals off 2 turnovers from their big guys, put the Panthers up 3-2. Were able to hold on to that lead and take the first 2 games on the road. Really put them in a tough situation, and they weren't able to climb back from that. I do think that Florida was the better team in most of these games, but when you have these 1-goal games, I mean, it really could go either way, especially when you have the guys up front like you do in Toronto. It's just one shot can change the entire game, but they weren't able to get it done. I don't know if the Leafs were just coming off too much of a high of winning that round 1, and they didn't want it as much in round 2 as much as Florida did. But I mean, it is a little bit disappointing for Toronto. It almost feels like that round 1 win doesn't even really matter that much. I mean, only winning 1 game in round 2 against the Florida Panthers team, who they had the advantage all season long, and they just weren't able to get it done in the playoffs. Question for the Leafs is going to be now, what's going to be happening with most of their management, with Kyle Dubas, with Sheldon Keefe, Brendan Shanahan? Are they going to come back? Was this enough for MLSE to consider them keeping Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas? Kyle Dubas' contract's up. We'll see what's going to happen with him going into next season. I definitely think that one of the X factors in this series was Carter Verhaeghe. He scored a bunch of goals and was able to put a dagger in the Leafs' hearts after being drafted by this team. I believe it was in 2013. So, I mean, he's just been proving all playoffs long that he is turning into an elite player. And it's really nice to see that a guy like that, who really, I don't want to say struggled the early part of his career, but it took him a little bit of time to actually make a name for himself in the NHL, and he's looking like he's a great player in this league. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video, recapping round 2 of the NHL playoffs. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't so far, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell, and we'll be out with more content after the conference finals is done.